Recreation Center, with its many limitations, was a facility that provided many of the area's various age groups with needed recreation space. When the state's Division of Labor and Industry found that Lawrence was no longer safe for public use, the city's rec department was left with a great void in its ability to provide services to the community. Demonstrating great interdepartmental cooperation, Mr. Dolan of the rec department and you, the Rutland City School Board, stepped in to fill that void. Your willingness to lease unused school property and allow access to other school facilities has enabled the rec department to continue to provide services to the Rutland region. Opening the school's doors is appreciated by the many who benefit from your action. Community access to Rutland High School's gym has enabled adult recreational leagues to not only survive, but to flourish. As a member of the Rutland Volleyball Council, I have had the privilege and pleasure of working with many school department staff. These contacts have shown me that Rutland can take pride in the fact that they have hardworking employees who exhibit an amicable and professional approach to their duties. Bruce Gee and David Walk before him have encouraged community use of school facilities. Both have given up private time on weekends to allow the Volleyball Council to run periodic tournaments. One such event for high school age participants attracted teams from around the state. Teens were exposed to a great lifetime sport, met peers from other areas, and interacted with adult volunteer players. Pam Frost, one of the high school's teachers, was a tremendous help in organizing the day. We look forward to repeating a similar event this year. Glenn Olson has been of immeasurable help. He has worked to fit our league schedules around times his department needs the gym space. He has also willingly donated his own time for weekend tournaments. His assistance and attention to detail have helped solve any problem that has popped up in the last 2 years. All this is done while attending to his own very busy routine. A special thanks must go to the entire custodial staff. Presently, 4 volleyball leagues use the school on 4 different nights. The presence of these leagues has increased the custodian's workload. A transition from school activity to our purpose must take place each evening as we arrive. The custodians are always there to ensure that the transition takes place as quick and easy as possible. They put up basketball hoops, help with equipment, roll back bleachers, clean the area if needed, and in general, handle any problem that may exist at the moment. They usually manage to meet all our needs before they have to be asked. The on-duty custodian for the Sunday League is paid for by the rec department. This is because there is no regularly scheduled custodian for this period. It would be easy for this person to open, sit, close, and pick up the overtime. What really takes place truly shows the staff's professionalism. After assisting in setting up the gym, it has been my observation each custodian has found a positive way to utilize their time. It is common to see them cleaning to get a jump on the next day. Times that it has snowed, they are outside attending to snow removal, making the Monday morning job easier for themselves or a co-worker. The entire Rutland region owes a huge thanks to the Rutland City School Board and the entire staff of the school department. Without your efforts, all the activities mentioned here could not take place. Sincerely yours, Michael J. Barron. Secondly, dated February 12th. Dear Michael, since I will not be at the board meeting on Tuesday night, I would appreciate it if you would read this into the public record during the correspondence section of the agenda. At tonight's meeting, the board will be asked to take action on a new position, Coordinator of Curriculum and Assessment. While I agree with much of the proposal, I have some concerns about the proposed qualifications. In particular, I feel the candidate should be licensed both as a Vermont Superintendent of Schools and as a Vermont Principal, not either or as currently suggested. Since we have had no public discussion concerning the elimination of the Assistant Superintendent's position, and there were valid reasons for hiring an Assistant Superintendent last year, I would like to see us continue to have the flexibility within any new administrative position that would be available if a candidate held both licenses. I also have a concern regarding the Rutland High School Academic Program Guide for 96-97. There seems to be a great deal of inconsistency relating to content prerequisites for advanced courses. This is particularly true in AP Biology. A selected sophomore only needs to meet the earth science requirement, but a selected junior must meet a biology and a chemistry requirement. In addition, other higher level courses require meeting during jam plan. These discrepancies disturb me, and I wonder if we are meeting the best needs of students who will be competing in national exams with others who bring stronger preparations into those exams. I would like to know the rationale behind these differences, as well as learning if the College Board has any recommended criteria, and the percentage of Rutland students taking the test who scored a 3 or higher last year as compared with 93 and 94. I realize there is a certain urgency to accepting the program guide, but if other board members share my concern, I would ask if the guide could be accepted with perhaps an asterisk, noting that some things were under discussion at the time of printing. In the future, I would also ask that the program guide be given to the board with at least one intervening meeting, so that we would not be under time constraints. Thank you for your consideration, and happy Valentine's Day. Sincerely, Madeline Sherman. I think both of the items she brings up will be addressed later during the agenda. The next order of business is the approval of the minutes of the last regular meeting of the board dated January 23rd, 1996. A motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of January 23rd? I would note in the third paragraph, prior to having the clerk, about halfway through, it says 2 out of the 3 county senators, not representatives. Any other additions or corrections? If not, all in favor of the minutes as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Are there any citizens in the audience who wish to address the board regarding any issues this evening? I would then ask the superintendent to address the licensed and non-licensed section of the personnel memorandum, number 125, dated February 9th, 1996, and the chair would ask that a motion to approve the personnel memorandum be approved as recommended by the superintendent of schools.
So moved. Second.
Dr. Brothers?
Thank you, Dr. Dick. The personnel recommendations tonight in the license section are A, for the appointment of Lori McLeod to the mathematics teaching position at Rutland Middle School. Lori will be replacing, actually, the first listed person under the retirement resignation, in this case, David Thomas, as the mathematics teacher at the Rutland Middle School. And then the additional retirement of Diane Berry, special needs teacher at the Stafford Technical Center at the end of the school year. Non-licensed recommendations for tonight: the retirement, Francis Clark, a maintenance supervisor in the maintenance department, and a list of reappointments, adult instructors who have been hired before, which is attached. And then item C, 2 new appointments for tonight: George Guinness in English in the adult education program, Mark Camden, investments in the adult education program. And that will complete the recommendation for this evening.
Okay. Are there any comments or questions regarding the personnel memorandum? If not, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Instructional development, Dr. Brothers.
Thank you again. The first item in the instructional development section of tonight's agenda is to make some preliminary comments about the budget presentation, the budget proposals for 1996-97. This evening sort of serves as an introduction into the ensuing discussions we will hold every 2 weeks from this point on through the almost the end of May. I have a couple of overheads to use, but basically I'll just, it'll be a presentation to you. In front of every school commissioner there's a red packet in which I've included some information for you tonight. This document that's included in there represents our budget plan for next year, And as I said, it's the beginning of our 4-month process, concluding on May 28th when the board adopts a budget that will be submitted to the mayor. It's important to remember that the numbers will change quite a bit. The whole document remains flexible throughout this process, and changes, of course, will take place as a result of public discussions and more new and current information coming to our attention. We're all fully aware around this table that the most expensive part of the budget is that dealing with personnel. Staff requirements are driven by the number of students we serve, and the students we serve both at the elementary level and the secondary level next year, as you can see in looking at the monthly and almost bi-monthly enrollment statistics we share with you, really have not changed too much from last year until this year, and again from this year to next. In fact, the increases at the secondary level and the decreases of about 30 students at the elementary level, which is from K through 6, really don't show any significant sizes that would warrant us, at least at this time, in recommending any decrease in staff. In fact, one could present the case that at the intermediate school we might be able to need another class to meet a second grade moving up next year. There'll be more discussion about that when we discuss that portion of the budget in a couple of weeks. With the tuition picture at the secondary level, we're currently projecting an increase of 15 students, which shows us a slight bump again in tuition income for next year. Last year, several state studies also demonstrated that the city schools were being operated in a fairly cost-effective manner. Comparisons of class sizes to other high schools in the county showed that our high school, for example, was certainly at least on the high side, if not the highest, throughout Rutland County, and the same was true with all the elementary schools. Nothing has really changed. In fact, the state study that came out in October, and I included that in your packet and highlighted it in yellow, shows that our current expense per student to be much lower than the state average. In fact, I think it depicts that for the past 3 years. The budget plan continues to feel the impact of needy children. Our community, like so many throughout the state, is coping with an increasing number of dysfunctional families who are sending children to school unprepared to learn. It stretches across social economic lines. It doesn't just settle into any one particular group of people. But it's an important reason why many of our youth in school today appear sometimes disconnected, attracted to unusual risk-taking, or worse yet, perhaps even gang activity here in the city. There's an interesting booklet I provided in that folder for you called How Students Have Changed, published by AASA, the American Association of School Administrators, and it's a very good factual documentary of what's happened in, say, the past 10 or 15 years. Of course, those changes, the social cultural changes affecting youth, in turn affect us as we plan the budget for next year. We've approached the budget building for this year in a slightly different direction from the past. The chief difference is that I've asked the teachers and the staff to submit to me all requests without any controls or reins placed upon them ahead of time, and to submit those to us, and we collated all that material, and the totals of those figures is what we are submitting to you tonight. Keeping this in mind, let me review some highlights of this budget. In a few minutes, I'll put a overhead on the screen and just go over some of those numbers. One plan or one program which we are considering expanding, and because of that, we've included the necessary cost in the budget so far, is the possibility of expanding our kindergarten program to a modified full day. We are to make any impact at all on the learning and behavior problems of young people. We must really begin addressing some of those needs at an earlier age. This modified program, and modified I underline, would provide 3 full days of kindergarten as opposed to the current 5 half days. It would be our first step in addressing youth risk behaviors, not only the first step in terms of the school district, but it would be our first step this year in putting together our plan, which we'll bring before you later this year, a complete plan for addressing these youth risk behaviors, the results of which we saw earlier in the school year on that student survey. Another highlight of this budget is providing some management assistance at the intermediate school. This new school has been very successful, yet it is still very large. The school's administration has committed an extraordinary amount of time and energy towards its success, but I am concerned about our ability to maintain that intensity. I believe assistance is needed, and perhaps similar to that which exists at the middle school, and again, we'll discuss that in more detail when we get to that part of the budget discussion, and again, I think in a few weeks. As announced in December, we need a cost-effective alternative program to meet the challenges of the EBD students. Our planning group has met twice already, and we're continuing to meet. We're continuing to have discussions with VAC on that topic. In this particular case, the recommended program, however, will fit within the special education funding mechanism of the budget and won't necessarily in itself result in any increases. In this budget, we will be recommending that the reorganization planning money we had in the budget last year be shifted into staff development funds next year. One specific need would be increased training in a social skills program. The second would be in technology. CAP committees might also be developing other needs for staff development next year. Instructional supplies and equipment, item 5. For about 4 to 5 years now, we have been very limited in our ability to keep up to the demand for additional and updated teaching materials. This year, I asked all the personnel to develop their requests, as I said, with no limits. These requests have all been included in the budget presented tonight. Instructional equipment and technology requests, in addition, have been broken out separately and are included in separate lists in your red folders. But they all have been included in the larger number which we're presenting tonight. This year, we've also increased health and support services through Medicaid funding. It's been a big help to us and certainly beneficial to the children that it has touched. We are carefully monitoring this flow-through income to determine to what degree we can modify or maintain or modify those services for next year. We've also asked people to submit to us areas in which they believe we can improve our buildings, and we will be putting together that list and submitting it to you later. That, however, would be handled through the 3-cent fund chiefly for those items that we could accomplish. Those are some of the highlights. Other modifications will be discussed as we proceed through the budget. Let me put up one overhead on the screen tonight. And Bob, could you come up here, please, and plug that in for me? Most of this page, for those who are familiar with this format that we've used in the past, most of this page represents the income portion of the budget. And the current budget that we have brought together is represented down here at the very bottom, this $18,980,000 figure. That represents a fairly significant increase over this year's budget. I think it's about 8.5%. I'll speak about that again in a few minutes. On the income side of the budget, many of our figures are very much similar to what they were this year. There are some gaps in there. There's a couple I just want to point out and highlight for you. The first one is at the very top, which is our general state aid figure. It's the formula state aid. And we see an increase there, I think, of about $180,000, and that represents about a 5.5% increase in state aid for next year. The next one that I want to point out is the fourth one down, which is the $1,434,000 figure. That represents the secondary tuition. That represents the increase of 15 students, and that is a gain of slightly more than $100,000. So that indeed is going in the right direction. The next big increase you see is down here next to the vocational school is $1,146,000 figure. That is an increase which is due to the Voc School changing its program to the full year scheduling model for next year. That represents an increase in income, but it's also balanced out on the revenue, on the expense side, by an equal amount of expenditures. But I wanted to point that out because it is an increase, and I wanted to explain that one. The next three figures I have left blank because we do not have a good handle on that yet. Those are the three line items that deal with special education. Dave and I will be attending a superintendent's workshop Thursday of this week. I suspect most of the superintendents of the state will be attending up in Montpelier. We hope to pick up some additional information that will shed some more light on where we'll stand with respect to aid in special education next year. Those costs around the state and school districts have been going up significantly, and they have too for us, and so we're very concerned about hopefully seeing some increases in the aid to assist us in those programs for next year. Another key line item in the budget is Title I. Title I is what was formerly known as Chapter 1 for many, many years. This item of $355,000 actually represents some decrease in the Title I program for this year. Unexpended, we're anticipating a small increase in that for the time being for next year. In the meantime, currently, we don't have any total receipts projection made because it's just too early in our opinion. Perhaps within a month we can start to bring some closure to that so we have a better idea on what we're looking at. The figure that the comparison that I make most in my work with the budget is looking at the current budget, the current operating budget, and its increase to next year. And that's the one which we have to, I base all my judgments upon that particular gap, and closing that gap. It is my considerable judgment that we probably have to bring our projected budget for next year down to somewhere between $18 to $18.2 million, which would represent about a 3.5 to 4% increase over last year's operating budget. At some point, I will be prepared to make recommendations to reach that goal. By accomplishing that, I believe that we can carefully control our local tax resources and put a budget together to operate the system on next year, and not only meet the 93 pledge of 5 years for the charter limit, but possibly even surpassing it. So the budget development process will be challenging, but this is not new to us, nor are we alone in this struggle. I look forward to working with the board and the administrators and the faculty in this process over the next 4 months, and we'll really begin in more earnest detail on February 27th when we're discussing the primary school section of the budget. I'd be open to any questions at this time, or first round or initial questions at this time. Cheryl?
What is the miscellaneous policy?
Bob, could you address that, please?
Rental facilities, we do have a piece in there that $50,000 for two students we have in the district that are from our district that pay for one of our staff members. We put up the tuition, but we didn't put it in tuition. It's not a high school tuition. Rental facilities and things that are not in the major categories that we have.
Additional tuition. Okay.
How about the athletics increase?
Yes, I'm glad you pointed that out. I overlooked that. That represents right now a decrease in revenue because I have been contacted by the Raider support group, and they have expressed an unwillingness to continue with the intensive kind of fundraising they've been doing in the past to close the gap in our budget. So we're going to have to address that, and I will have some recommendations on that, but we do have to address that sometime in the next 4 months. Bill?
Could you just quickly summarize again the process that was used to come up with this budget so that I'm aware of the process, and then if there were any suggestions or recommendations from any of the teachers or principals relative to any ideas or concepts that might improve the system but at the same time save some money in terms of the way we operate?
Well, I didn't get any suggestions back in terms of ideas on how to improve in terms of operating or saving money. I have reported to you this total figure here includes everything that our staff has submitted to the principals and in turn to this building that we've put together and just organized into a budget presentation. So in the past, knowing that we had some financial limitations, I took a different approach to it. I used an allocation system and on a per capita basis per building. I simply decided on a figure that we'd spend on supplies and equipment and materials and let each principal and staff decide how they would use that money within their building. But for a variety of reasons, and one chief one feeling that I felt it was important to maybe let the public and the school commissioners know maybe how far behind we were falling on some of these things, I decided to change that approach this year and not put any reins on the system, but let them submit everything to us. So, hope that answers the question, though.
Now, let me just ask this question. In terms of the process that we might use this year, in order to analyze the budget, refine the budget, and work with it, what's your thinking on how we're going to attack it in terms of the process that we use?
Well, we're going to talk about each section of the budget in more detail and schedule a number of meetings. I think there's about 6 or 7 of them scheduled throughout this 4 months. And as we get closer to knowing what our financial resources are, and we listen to the ideas coming forth, first we'll be able to give the school commissioners a better idea on how much we probably have to spend. And the school commissioners can in turn advise the administration whether they think that figure is too low or too high. So we can begin to come to closure on that. And then at the same time, as we proceed through this work, we can begin to allocate or decide which school buildings might get more funds than another school building in terms of meeting the needs that we might decide are higher priority in one place versus another part of the school district.
Okay. Are we going to approach this on sort of a school-by-school basis so that when at one meeting we would take on one school, and on another meeting we'd take on another school so that we could have...
The only place there'd be a difference is at a primary school, so they'd both be the same way.
And that's the thinking of the way that we go about doing it, so that we can look at the instructional program, listen to what's going on, take a look at how that ties in the budget so that we can see if there are any ideas that we might come up with.
And I would invite people from the different levels of the different schools to be present that night, to interact with us, and respond to questions, provide information.
Dr. Dick, I had submitted a letter asking for some specific items to the budget process. One of those items was a budget document that allowed us to compare from year to year as well as compare to the current year our expenditures. And I noticed that this budget document, again, is in the same format that last year's budget document was. And I'm just wondering what happened to that request. Are there any board members, other board members that had requested the same kind of comparative document?
You were the only one, but that was passed on to the superintendent.
Okay, then, Dr. Brothers, is that something that I can expect to have forthcoming, or?
In my considered judgment, probably not to the degree in which you've asked for it. I spoke to Bob Fingan about it, and I think it would just represent too much work on the part of the administration to provide that kind of detail. That's where I'd be coming from on it. We do provide you with one comparison, that is where this year's budget is, with each part of the budget compared to what the projection is for next year. In fact, we made that change or modification or improvement to the system probably about 2 or 3 years ago. To take it a step further and to go back about 2 years before that and add similar data, I just think would be really beyond our capability in the way we've been handling our budget work. And Bob Fingan is here. We can speak to that also. He and I did address this and talk about it.
Well,
Could you be more specific? The whole board hasn't seen your letter, so if they could understand exactly what you're asking.
As I go through, and I'm not on the expenditure side, I'm not on the receipt side, I'm on the expenditure side of the budget. And as I go through the pages that we have in our possession now, we see the senior high, the middle school, Stafford Technical Center, and district-wide columns. But when we look at each of those columns, we're not able to compare those numbers with any numbers from any previous year or with the numbers from this year. We're able to compare broad totals, but we are not able to compare line item by line item. If we use the budget document in the preparation of our budget that we use on a monthly basis now, then I think that we would have the ability to do some comparison. And I think that we would be able to make a more informed judgment about the directions that we're going in, whether they're increases or decreases. I don't see that we can make that kind of comparative analysis with this budget document that we have in front of us now, or the budget document that we've had in front of us over the previous years.
All we have to do is have last year's budget in a packet and just bring it to each meeting and be able to go down line by line because the lines are the same. And you can take a look at the numbers. It seems, and we could go back and have somebody make copies of that and just circulate it. It does not seem to me necessary to have it on a single sheet of paper when it would take a lot of time in order to accomplish that. I would much prefer to just have last year's budget and we just bring it to each meeting and compare it so we can go line by line, as opposed to have it on our sort of working draft if you want to have a line by line itemization. I think it's difficult to get it all on one page. Otherwise, you'd be having multiple lines. And I know it's difficult in order to create that kind of comparison data on our Lotus program that we have. And all I'm saying is that to accomplish the same thing in simple, practical terms, all we have to do is have last year's budget and just look at the numbers side by side with 2 pieces of paper.
That we can easily do because the fiscal year 96 numbers that we have on there are pulled right off of last year's document. Yes.
The other issue we had is, in the past 3 years, we've changed configurations in our facilities and building layouts that, for comparison purposes, we didn't have intermediate schools 2 years ago. We had Dana and Lincoln, different grades and different numbers of staff, so a line item by line comparison that's not somebody to kind of difficult to put together.
But when this document is all approved at the end of this budget session, then this document is transferred to the monthly document that we use. I guess what I'm asking for is, can we transfer it now and have that other document to work with at the same time.
Cheryl,
That's
I
the one
don't,
that we're familiar with on a monthly basis.
you're familiar with this one. We've used this now for 4 years running.
This one comes out once a year.
But we spent 4 months on it. From February to May.
Cheryl,
To go to the other sheets you're talking about means that all the salaries are reflected in the intermediate school, the northeast school, the northwest school, the high school, the Stafford Technical Center. They're all grouped into one line on the other top of financial page. It doesn't tell you where any of those salaries come from. It's one figure for all salaries, instructional staff. And same on and on and on throughout all this data. This breaks it down into much more specific data.
But without allowing us the ability to compare.
Well, we've given you the ability to compare by pulling off the figures from last year's documents. And as Bill suggested, we can bring up the sheets from last year and you can make those comparisons. It's time to,
And certainly, if we're gonna get a copy of last year's document, I for one would at least like to see it updated to what we are actually spending and not what we budgeted, because what we budgeted at
That's
this
right.
point in time doesn't mean anything to us. We need to know what our actual figures, what we,
to the operating budget.
right.
Bob?
So we can look at last year's same type of document
Mhm.
and compare it with this year.
so we'll convert this format with the 95, 96 numbers that are current, so the numbers have to be changed. Is that where the board wants to be?
Yeah, that's what we have labeled on the front page as our current budget. Our current budget numbers that we're working and operating under is what's going to go on the
17,498.
same sort of format as we have here. That's perfect.
And Bob, you're comfortable we can do that?
Yes.
Would that be helpful, Cheryl?
It certainly would be helpful, yes.
Well, there's no further.
No,
Yes, Cheryl?
Can you tell me where in the receipts is the additional, what is it called? Capital, the capital funds, the reimbursement that we get from the state?
Right up in there.
That is, so that is part of the state aid number?
That's correct. Exactly how much it is, we really can't tell you yet. That hasn't been broken out yet, Bob, has it? The actual
No,
construction aid? But it's in there.
it's in there, and we should get pretty much, based on some of the preliminary numbers we sent to the state, they use. Our age should, if our percentage is the same, it should be about the same.
Okay. Another piece of information that I had asked for in that letter was the recommendations that are presented to us on a periodic basis, coming from the state departments or the federal departments,
Mhm.
wherever the aid is associated with.
Mhm.
They're generally, I believe, are budgetary recommendations as to how much is anticipated that we might receive, as well as how much of that anticipated amount we should feel comfortable budgeting for.
Well, we have some of those here already for you. The ones who I haven't provided you yet are the ones here in special education, and this one last item which deals with state and
Okay.
federal grants.
Now, the state aid, is the state then recommending that we budget the same as last year?
No, this figure right there is the most conservative estimate we have received from the State Department to what our formula aid will be for next year.
So that incorporates an increase of some amount, but not necessarily the full amount that the printout sheet had recommended, right?
It
The
represents an increase. I don't know what else you're talking about.
You get a printout, I'm assuming
Yeah.
that that's where you got these numbers from.
That's correct.
Okay, and on that printout, there would have been an amount for Rutland City.
Yes.
And then I believe that there should have been some sort of a cover letter that would have come with that and said, well, even though this printout says you're going to get this much money, for purposes of budgeting until the legislature has actually made the decision, you may, if you're looking at an increase, you may want to budget 50% of that increase, or if you're looking at a decrease.
The printout gives you one figure to use. Jerry Cassell's.
With no recommendation?
With no recommendation.
Okay.
He says that this is the most conservative estimate he can make at this time. This is the printout going to the state, or going across the street to the legislature. And it's one, I think it's fairly consistent with the governor's recommendation. And so that's the one we use. That's the one that all school districts use at this point.
Okay, but now when it comes to special education, I know in previous years there's been some discussions about recommendations accompanying those numbers.
They have given us three different printouts, three different recommendations. One they shouldn't even bother printing because it's based upon the 50% requirement in statute, which the state has never met since the statute was passed. 50% reimbursement at the 50% level. Then they give us two other printouts. And for my opinion, at this stage of the game, they're just not worthwhile trying to deal with yet until we get some firmer figures, firmer feelings from the legislature and from the State Department as to where they're going. There's a major change being considered by the legislature right now in terms of special education funding. Wherever it goes, school districts can be all over the lot in terms of what they receive next year. But I'm not going to put any figure down yet as even something I feel comfortable with recommending to this board. Maybe after Thursday we might get some more clarity, but I quite honestly am not going to bank on it.
This state aid figure, the $3,090,000, that was last year's state aid that included the construction aid, Bob. And so they're projecting on a worst case scenario that we will see about a $180,000 increase in total state aid. Right. Thank you.
And there's been some discussion or certainly newspaper articles about Title I, and the question as to whether that may even be in existence as of next year.
I don't think there's any doubt that, about its existence next year. What's difficult to get a handle on is the funding for next year. But everything we've heard from our representatives in Washington is that the program will be continued, and even some of the other federal programs. But to what degree that will be funded is what's still up in the air to a certain point.
And there's absolutely no projections as to...
Yeah, this is, in Title I, this is our best projection to date regarding that main federal program. That's the big federal program, Title I. That's why we break that one out separately by itself.
And did I hear you say something about this represents a decrease in the program?
Yes.
So the number we used last year for budget purposes is $354,000. Our actual grant this year, which we didn't find out about until later in the summer, was $443,000. So that's why we anticipated a 20% reduction from this year's grant. That's why the 355 is a reduction.
So in that 400, no, I'm sorry, never mind.
If there's no other questions, that's the extent of the presentation I wanted to make tonight and the opening round on budget work.
Any recommendations for us to prepare or material that you handed out?
Just to look at it, I would suggest that if you really wanted to do a nice little read, that little pamphlet would be a good piece to just go through. It doesn't take long at all, but it's very, very enlightening.
So the technology equipment and the instructional equipment, it's listed in the red book, which is in the budget projection.
He's in there, yes. Okay, then we will continue on tonight with some other presentations. The course booklet comes first with Brewski, principal, presiding.
Before I get started with the course booklet, I apologize for not giving you fair warning, but I had an opportunity to have Steve Halford, who is our Creative Structures instructor here this evening, with some works from the Jan plan from our metal castings, bronze metal castings, on display in the back. Steve, why don't you describe it? You were intimately involved with that whole process. And
when you get a chance, what you'll see here is, and I've written it out, the students, actually 49 students carved in wax, and then it was done through the lost wax technique, where the piece was had a ceramic shell mold put around it, it was heated up, the wax was poured out, and into it bronze was poured. Mr. Glenn Campbell of Campbell's Casting assisted with this. He was a great help. It was a great project for the students, a lot of work. And I didn't realize it was so much work. But these pieces cast were divided up into, the theme was the various educational disciplines and all the little branches off of that that would have something to do with, for instance, science, math, art, the arts of fine arts, sports, language, literature, and these will then be put into these groups, welded together. One of the students has volunteered to help assist weld this all together, and then we're going to mount these on the walls. It's fortunate, been talking about it, that the school has steel studs. I think it will support the weight okay. So these plaques, and I've divided them. This isn't exactly how they're going to be, because I'm going to let the students, it's going to be like a great big jigsaw puzzle, arranging these pieces. We get the arrangement we like, we're going to weld them into that position, and then those, as you see, 6 different plaques will be put up at various places in the school, and I think it'll be a permanent display that will give a lasting artistic quality to Rutland High School. Thank you.
thank you, Steve.
I suggest we take 3 or 4 minutes, stretch our legs and see what's there. We could turn on.
Perhaps we could do it at break time. Folks on TV.
Well, then we move
They
the
can listen to
camera.
the oohs and ahs and have
I wanted to try like
We'll ask Steve to make sure he leaves them there, Al, so you get a chance to look at them later.
Thank you.
In your packet, you received the first draft of the academic programs of studies for the 96-97 academic year. Please understand that it's not the finished product by all means. One of the things we are including is some more student art. We have several students that have volunteered their time and done some artwork for each of the disciplines. Again, that will be included in the booklet. There are several areas in the book that we've gone through since the first draft and made some adjustments, made some additions that were inadvertently deleted. So as we say, it is a draft, and we wanted to bring that draft to you so that you get a chance to look at it. Some highlights that I would bring up to you if you do have your drafts with you. We're pleased with the number of enrichment courses on page 12 and 13 of the document, which are enrichment courses through the Stafford Technical Center. With the revised schedule, it should bolster those opportunities for our students to get into the enrichment courses at the vocational center. The other areas that have been very popular in the area of English, in the English courses, again, page 18 and page 21, the general area. I know I'm traveling really fast here, but raise your hand if I need to slow down. Vocabulary Workshop was one of the courses that was very popular with students this year, and again will be offering this next year, and it's helped some students with some SAT anxieties that gives them an opportunity to get a chance to work with the different aspects of what they can expect on the actual SATs. The other courses that also included our creative writing workshops, we're very pleased with the response to that. One that was inadvertently left off that I noticed today, and I met with Jason Raubtoy, who's the instructor, was journalism. And I'm sure a number of you have noticed that the Red and White newspaper, our school newspaper, has been very active this year, and that's because of this journalism class, as they have diligently produced a good quality newspaper. The other area that has also blossomed has been our family and consumer studies on page 22 and 23. One of the courses, Real Meals, was one of those courses that started as a jam plan enrichment, and because of the student interest in that particular area, has now this will be the second year that's been offered as a full half-year course. And there's a number of other courses. The Child Psychology and Development, again, has been a very popular course, as well as Food Science and Safety and Nutrition. Art has changed substantially. Mary Crowley is the instructor in art at this time. This will be her second year in that position. The art courses have changed in regard to what each of those art courses will include. We have Art 2, painting, drawing and painting for those that are the serious art students. So they're branching out and offering more to those students who are interested in the fine arts pieces. Also, we're pleased to include, and I know David had mentioned this several months ago as we started the deliberations and discussions with the Vermont Interactive TV. Russian will be offered at 7 o'clock every morning, daily from 7 to 7:50 through the VIT, from Vermont Interactive TV. The instructor is actually a Middlebury College professor, Tom Byer, is actually volunteering his time because he thinks it's important that students get an opportunity to sample this. Will be one of the, they'll go with as many as 6 sites within the state for VIT for this course, and we can have between 12 and 15 students at our site that will be able to take the Russian. And we figure at 7 in the morning we certainly will get serious students. The other areas that I wanted to point out were on page 40 in the science department. We are looking at additional courses. One of the areas that's been talked about is our advanced placement courses that we've offered. We are, as was mentioned previously, are offering the AP Biology course. We also would like to offer this year advanced placement chemistry and as well as advanced placement physics to complement our other advanced placement courses. We continue to try to offer as wide a variety of courses as we possibly can, given the time frame that we have, the number of students and the number of staff that we're using. I'll entertain any questions or comments that any of the board would have at this point regarding the program of study.
Bruce, in the letter that was read into the record earlier, Madeline raised the question regarding AP courses. Do you remember what the question is, or can you address it in any way?
The question, as I understood it, was her concern was specifically the advanced placement biology and the fact that sophomores who are getting into the class, it's by they're accepted into the program through an application and acceptance procedure with course instructor looking at their earth science course instructor giving them the recommendation to do that. For juniors and seniors, it's a minimum of 190 and 180 in biology lab and chemistry lab, as well as a recommendation of former science teachers. This last year was a fledgling attempt at this. So we don't have the results, obviously, because they haven't taken the AP biology test at this point, and that won't come until May. One of the reasons that we did this with sophomores was we had changed our science curriculum so to the point that we had decided that we would have all of our freshmen taking earth science with the idea they would have a common ground, common base to start with. We knew where all the students would be placed, and from that they would branch out to different areas. If there were students that were exceptional, rather than hold them back and have them in a situation where they would be trying to take physics and AP biology their senior year, we thought that if the instructors felt that they were capable, that having that advanced placement biology option their sophomore year might do them well. They still have the option, if the parents feel uncomfortable with it, that their son or daughter could actually pick it up their junior or senior year. So I think that's the gist of the concern. John?
Well, if the upperclassmen are coming in with biology and chemistry, is there some component in that AP biology course that those sophomores are going to be put at a disadvantage because they don't have those subjects?
George, George Hooker, who is actually the instructor, may be able to give us a little more insight into that.
That was a concern we had, but my basic feeling was that to be successful in the AP Bio was the strongest criteria I was looking for was that they be an excellent reader and be able to compose a really good essay. And between those two criteria, that has turned out to work quite well. I currently have 29 sophomores enrolled, and they're all holding their own and doing admirably. In fact, in many cases, they are getting the best grades in the class that they're in. So my concerns don't seem to have a serious foundation that they would be at a disadvantage. They may work harder, but maybe they're out there to prove something as well to the upperclassmen. But I'm not seeing sophomores with D's and juniors and seniors with A's and B's. That's not the case at all. They're all AB students. They're all at the top section. So that's been very encouraging. And the discrepancy in the criteria was simply a matter of what did we have to base it on. Incoming 10th graders, all we had to go by was their 9th grade performance. And it was the first year we required all 9th graders to take earth science, so that's all we had to go by. That and which math are they taking, what are they getting for a math score. The incoming juniors and seniors have been tracked differently. If they were honors level, they had been tracked honors since the first year, which meant that they had experienced bio and lab honors and chem and lab honors. So we had that to go by. So we're keeping like a dual criteria until everybody's had that same experience of having to do 9th grade earth science, and then we'll have to keep reevaluating how we assess. Basically, we're just looking to make sure that every kid who comes in has the real potential to be a successful candidate there. We don't want to get a kid in there who's in over their head. That's all that was.
In general, are all the students who want to take honors and are qualified getting to take the honors courses that they want?
They should be. Again, I think the only drawback perhaps might be scheduling, but that's if they're following a normal track for a sophomore, junior, senior, when you develop a master schedule, that usually is one of those keys of putting the puzzle together, that they're set up so that if they're in line to be taking those courses, it should fall in place.
One of the things that I think we understood a year ago is that somebody could be taking honors English and not be honors tracking in the other discipline, so that they might not be tracking along. Are those kids getting what they need and want, as far as you understand?
As far as I understand it, yes. I think that's been one of the real strengths of the program, is that we have enough sections that students can take an honors English, but maybe not an honors science or social studies, that we can work with their particular strengths if that's a real interest and where they're really motivated. And we will continue to strive for that.
Good.
Other questions?
Well, just to make sure that I understand about the different qualifications or prerequisites under advanced placement biology. George, were you saying that as the years progress, we're going to be looking then at having no actual prerequisites for advanced placement biology?
No, I'm just saying that they will have to be revised. The different students will have had different experiences. So an 11th grader arriving will have had earth science, and if they had opted to not take AP as a sophomore, they would have had earth science followed by bio and lab, and then they would be looking to come to us with that combo, earth science, bio and lab. Kid waiting until their senior year might have had earth science, bio lab, chem, That's the background they present. The student who arrives in their senior year could have also done earth science, bio and lab, might have been recommended for chem and lab honors, but we also by that time will have AP papers, and they'll be considering doing AP physics. And what I'm saying is, I found it interesting not too many days back that there was an article in the paper about the voucher system and how someone at one point said something about, well, teachers are just afraid of change, and it just smacked me right in the face. If they realize the changes that Rutland Public Schools have undergone in the last 3 to 5 years, especially the science department, that they realize what a silly statement that was. And all I'm saying here is that in the future, the criteria for entrance into AP is just going to have to keep evolving because we keep changing our offerings. And we've got the James Lane, we've got block scheduling, we've got a new school, and there's so much flux going on. We have to just stay flexible while still trying to maintain the very best criteria possible to get that student.
And I certainly appreciate hearing about change in schools, and I understand that there is a certain amount of change going on, but I guess what I'm confused about for this advanced placement course is that it's sounding to me as if, while initially it may have started out to be an advanced placement course which receives college credits for those students who successfully complete the test, it's changed to almost a high honors biology in that the students are no longer required to take a year of biology before they get to this program. And it's sounding like we're skipping a step, and I'm wondering if that's doing the students any good or if that's treating all students fairly. I feel a little uncomfortable that that we're requiring some students to have to take biology and others who are younger not to have to take it first. And I mean, I think that if it's a valid prerequisite for one, it should be a valid prerequisite for all.
Well, that's strictly a function of the child's readiness. If you got to look at what we used to do. If you were track honors, you got to skip earth science. You were so smart, you didn't have to take that science. You could jump right in at the deep end. And now we're saying, wait a minute, let's think. But while still rewarding the kid who does move faster than others and can prove him or herself to be capable of doing that. So it's not really that much of an inequity. Also, consider this, what if a student is not your highest honors kid, but would still like to take AP biology? Wouldn't it be better if they had a bio and lab first as prep and then got in there and could swim with everybody just as quickly, as opposed to not having had that prep and maybe struggling? So what we're trying to do is make it available while still keeping the criteria high so that the right people get in with the right preparation and be most successful. I don't really see it as that much of a...
Then maybe what I need to ask is if there was a junior or a senior who wanted to get into AP biology that took earth science in 9th grade, but because only 3 credits of science are required in the, to receive the high school diploma, chose not to take any science in their sophomore year, could they be considered in their junior year to take AP biology? Because as I read these prerequisites, the answer to that would be no.
My personal feeling, Cheryl, is that there are always extenuating circumstances, and if a case comes to us that's not out of the ordinary, that maybe is that, but the student is really very motivated in that science area, we certainly would look at it and not say, no, you haven't taken this, you can't do that. We would look at his past record and try to look at the motivation aspect. One of the things you have to understand with the AP courses is that the College Board test takes place at the end. There's no way to water these courses down. Ultimately, there's a test that they have to take at the end that doesn't allow for, skimming off the top and not doing what needs to be done during the course of the actual course.
Okay, then what I just heard you say differs from the second prerequisite that's on here, and I would just suggest that you go back and look at that.
Meaning which one?
The second prerequisite, the juniors and seniors, because it specifically says that there's a minimum of one biology and one chemistry lab that needs to be taken before that student can be admitted to AP biology.
Well, as Mr. McGee pointed out, we're
No, and-
responsive to individual exceptional cases, and as a matter of fact, last year, we had just such a student who asked to get in, who didn't meet that criteria. And went to talk to his former science teacher, who went to bat for him, talked to me about it, and he got in.
Okay.
So, but what you must realize you're describing is an exceptional situation,
Mhm.
because we've only had that happen once in the 8 years I've been involved in animal biology. So that's kind of outstanding, and of course, we can move on.
Other questions?
My one concern with it, Bruce and George, is I've seen it happen in recent years where I would be worried about the kids' comprehensive background coming into this. And I know in courses I took over the years, granted years ago in education, if they're going into this final exam, it's a college board exam, are there not things that sophomore might not have in a comprehensive background through his early learning that would be asked or put in there? Is he somewhat being put in that handicap situation? And also, from having been the teacher making a recommendation for a kid to go to another course, I have a little bit of reservation on the amount of subjective evaluation that might be asked of a particular teacher and the position that puts the teacher in terms of being accused of favoritism or something like that in a situation. I would like a less subjective evaluation if it were at all possible when we do this. If you're totally on a teacher recommendation, which it appears to be a little bit of where we're going to, I like a more black and white, say this is what you need and this is what you don't need type of thing.
Well, the
And I'm not-
criteria do include, I need to see their earth science grade.
Yeah.
Typically, these grades that come to me are like 98 to 96. Secondly, I need to see what math are you taking. It better be one of the better math. What grades are you getting in it? Typically, they're high 80s, high 90s. And then I need your earth science teacher's say-so, a candid say-so, yep, this is a good candidate. Then they need to write an essay that says why they want to do this as a sophomore when they still have the chance as a junior or senior to take it. So those are our criteria. There's no perfect system. We're doing the best we can to try to get the very best student in there who's going to be successful.
I think this being our fledgling year, once that test happens, we'll have a better feeling for, is it working or do we have to really start looking at making some adjustments to it.
So you may even modify this after the test.
It might very well be, depending on how we... Just a follow-up, any other questions? A follow-up, just so that you're aware, what our timeline at this point is that we plan on handing out the program of studies to the students right after vacation, so the 1st of March, and begin the registration process. And our ultimate goal is that we want the students to walk out of school in June with next year's schedule in hand. It's our hope. We're going to work real hard at it. We feel we can do it with the timeline that we have. It'll take some diligent work on the part of our guidance people and some diligent work on the part of parents to make sure their kids get in, to make sure they make appointments to sign up with their counselors and to get the business done that needs to happen. But as I say, it would make it much easier for parents and students, as well as guidance counselors and administrators in the middle of the summer, knowing that they already have a schedule and don't have to worry about when they come back in September.
Thank you.
Just let me ask you one more question, please.
Sure.
In terms of this academic program, to what extent by by saying this is what we want to do and want to accomplish? Does it tie us into our budget numbers? And how flexible are you in terms of when we sit down and go over the high school program? You'd be able to talk about ideas, brainstorming that might help us find ways to save in the high school budget.
I think there's always a measure of flexibility. I'm just thinking that despite we offer all these courses, not all these courses run. We have to look at the specific numbers that have actually registered for them and decide, does that warrant having one section, two sections, or are there not enough students to actually run that section? So as we build the master schedule, we look at what we have for staff and determine if we have the right numbers in that regard. So that would be one way of looking at it as we go through it. Continuing, one of the questions that had come up at one of the previous board meetings was the wanting to revisit the idea of the semestering. Dr. Brothers asked that I do some research on it, looking over research and also doing some research within schools in the state of Vermont that are presently utilizing semestering, just so that everyone has kind of a common ground on what semestering is. Basically what a semestering is comparable to what you would have in college, where you take, in this particular case, a 4x4. You take 4 courses in the first semester, and once those courses were done, you would receive grades and you'd move on to the next semester and pick up 4 different courses. Example, your first semester you may take Algebra 1. Second semester you've finished, or first semester you've now finished Algebra 1, you could then go on to Algebra 2 or Geometry, whatever the next sequence would be. French 1 would move on to French 2, but that's basically how it works. What I wrote down here for you and put in here was looking at the advantages that the semestering has according to the authorities that have dealt with semestering. The second page talks about critical issues regarding the semester plan, as well as instructional issues, student issues, and then the cost. And then I wrote down some of the reactions that some of the Vermont schools presently have that are involved in the semestering. And just to kind of go through and talk a little bit about some of the advantages that are seen through the semestering. One of the things that they see as an advantage is the teachers benefit from increased quality instruction time. Because they're meeting every day for a block, and usually the blocks are anywhere from 80 to 100 minutes per block, because they have blocks every day, there's less time that's needed for review. And that would be even over the situation where you have alternate day programming such as that we do, or scheduling, that there isn't that day in between. It happens 5 days a week, and it happens, the classes run only 4 classes during the day. Teachers are able to plan extended lessons. There are daily lessons, there's more continuity from one day to the next. The number of class changes is reduced. We already know that. We do that. Actually happens during our alternate day program as well. Work missed because a student is absent is easier to gather and monitor. When you only have 4 teachers, then if you miss a day, you only have 4 teachers to see that following day to get the work. That is an advantage. The disadvantage and negative part is that if you miss more than one day, it puts you at a disadvantage because you've missed multiple days and could cause you to fall behind because it's a more concerted, intense program for the semester. It's an advantage to teachers in the fact that you work with fewer students during any one semester. The reports that we got from some of the schools is that familiarity with students is a very positive outcome of semestering, to the point of oftentimes teachers hate to give up those students after the semester is over because they feel they have a more accountability for the students. The teachers have to prepare for fewer courses each day. That's not the case with it's very similar to what we have now because we do the alternate day schedule, but for a traditional 8-period day or 7-period day where a teacher would have to prepare for 6 or 7 classes or 5 or 6 classes in a day, that would be a difference. Also, the record-keeping teachers would end up having to keep track of attendance and grades for students, usually 60 to 75 students depending on the size of the classes. per semester. In the course of the year, they would be dealing with their normal 120 to 130 or 40 students, but it would be broken up that they would only have half those students during each semester. Another advantage is that they saw to the semestering was that students who have failed the course have an earlier opportunity to then take that course over. If you failed Algebra 1 during the first semester, if Algebra 1 is offered during the second semester, you could actually take that course again to try to make up for having missed it. One of the big advantages that is seen in the program is that the fact that students who are motivated have greater opportunities for acceleration. If you're exceptional in the foreign languages, you can take French 1, French 2 in your freshman year. Your sophomore year, it could be French 3 and French 4. If the school offers a French 5 or advanced French beyond that in your junior year. And what many of the schools are trying to evolve with the semestering is actually at that point allowing the students then to look at what's available through the colleges in the area. One of the things that we have an advantage for, and I was talking with one of the schools today, Winooski, who does semestering. We were talking about what do you do when you get to the point where you've exhausted what your school has, and we're both tied in with the Hyperion project right now that we could actually have a course running between our two schools of something beyond that if it came down to that type of thing. Another advantage is that students have a greater variety in the number of classes that they can be taking. They have a greater variety of elective courses compared to a normal schedule, and fewer textbooks would be required. An example would be earth science. And during the fall semester, half the freshmen would be taking earth science, and when they finished earth science at the break at the middle of the year, the other half of the freshmen would then take those same books and take their earth science course. So it would be a savings in that regard. Critical issues that have been raised because of the semestering. One is the retention of learning. A real fear on the part of many people that with the sequential courses, the time off in between may be such that it becomes a detriment to what they are maintaining. One of the things that was discussed in the reading that I had done was that any student that finishes up their course and goes on with the next semester, picking up the obvious next sequential course, if another student has decided to take a couple semesters off before they took that, it places an instructor and that student who took the time off at a disadvantage, because now there's what he may have not retained during that course of time, and how much review would that instructor then have to go through for some of the class versus some that had just gotten out of the class before. So there's an imbalance there, so there's a real concern with that. Curriculum organization, as it says here, the jury's still out on the curriculum coverage. Is covering less better because you're covering the material in much more detail. Again, there aren't an awful lot of studies that have happened at this point in time. We're looking at and talking with all the schools that are involved in Vermont and asking them, most of the schools at this point are in their second year and looking at their third year. Course sequencing in foreign language, as I mentioned before, concern for the retention if they take large blocks of time. And the other aspect is if a student is very motivated and has basically gone through all of the courses that you offer, what do they do for those last 2 years? If there isn't any enrichment available in the foreign language, what do? Does it translate as a 2-year layoff within a language program? And if they're looking at taking some of the college boards in, say, in foreign language, does that mean there's going to be a disadvantage when it comes to taking the test? Music programs, and Len will sit up on this one and take notice. The schools that I talked with and in the reading that I've done, that was probably one of the most problematic areas. What we look for as a music program is a music program that goes for the entire year. Example, we wouldn't expect our instrumental band to play for only half the year, but if you were doing a semester course, that's exactly what would take place. What most of the schools have tried to do is they have kind of done a hybrid of what the semestering is all about. They may have an example of, they may have 3 80-minute blocks where the courses are semesterized, and then 3 blocks of time of maybe 40 minutes where they run some of the specials, the music, maybe driver ed, maybe physical education, courses that such as music that need to happen during the course of the entire year. The other problem with advanced placement courses, again, we talked about the AP testing that takes place in May. If you have AP biology or AP chemistry and you're taking it during the first semester, the AP test is in May. You have January, February, March, and April before you actually take that test. And what happens between that time? On the other side, if you decide to take it the second semester, you perhaps have not finished the course by the time the AP test comes. So one of in the reading I did, one of the things they talked about was hoping that they could convince the College Board to maybe actually give those tests twice a year, one at the mid-semester and one at the end of the year to facilitate that.
Bruce, let me just jump in there
Sure.
for a moment, because I just came back this afternoon from the College Board meeting in Boston this weekend. And in fact, they do have a recent paper they just published about this last month, about that whole question you just talked about. And so far, there's not been enough of a call for administering the test in January, the first semester. And although they're looking at it, they haven't made the decision yet to even begin that yet next year. But they've at least, they're taking a look at it, and they're looking at studies and considering the whole issue. But it does remain a current topic for the College Boards themselves.
With student issues, probably one of the biggest concerns that schools have, and we at Rutland, is the transfers. A student entering a mid-semester ends up being a problem if they are coming from a traditional high school into a school that has semesters. Where do you place them? How far are they in a particular course? If they're looking at coming into an algebra course, and the algebra course you're in November, and the algebra course is probably more than halfway through the course, and this student in a traditional high school is basically only maybe a third of the way, that student certainly is at a disadvantage. So it's looking at that as a major problem. Probably the biggest area of concern for transfers ends up being in the urban schools because of the higher transit rates, the number of students that move in and out of schools. We're probably looking at, I was talking with Jim Walnick today, we're probably looking at students moving in and out. We're probably looking at between 50 and 100 students a year that are moving in and out of the system. Then you look at the flip side of it, if we have students that are in our system and then moving out, it just is the reverse. They're going traditional, where do they fit in with that school that they're going? It works very nicely if everyone does it, but if not everyone's in that particular program, or you're not moving from one to the other, it does cause some problems as far as the transfer situation.
You mean out of our 800 high school students, 50 to 100 are in a state of transition?
That's about what we have for students moving in, students moving out in the course of the year.
During the school year?
Yes.
Whoa.
The same thing through K-8 elementary homes. Same percentage, if not higher.
And some of the students we see a couple times during the course of the year, they moved out and come back. It's not uncommon, but it makes it interesting. Credits for graduation, based on the model, the 4x4 model, a student could actually graduate with 32 credits. We presently require 24 credits, which is the highest in the state of Vermont, along with the requirements for JAM plan as graduation requirements. Schools would have to look at either increasing the graduation requirements or allowing students, once they've reached whatever your limit is or your level for graduation requirements, allowing them to graduate early as a possibility perspective. One of the other concerns they talked about was schedule balance. If you are taking some high-powered courses, you probably don't want to take AP Chemistry, AP History, AP English, and Calculus all the same semester. You might want to break that up so that your schedule's just a bit easier. The attendance policy, again, with the idea of the absence, a student that is having problems with attendance, whether it be illness or whatever the case may be, the more that they're absent, the more critical it becomes, because it's an everyday situation with the 4x4. The other part is discipline. Suspensions, if you suspend a student for any length of time, again, you're affecting if they're out for 3 or 4 days. It's 3 or 4 days of that class, and it's magnified by the fact that it's a 80, 90, or 100-minute block. It's not the traditional time of being out for a 40-minute block, or in our case right now is that they're on an every other day schedule. So a 3-day suspension means you've missed one class 2 days, but not 3 consecutive days. So that would also be a concern. Moving on to cost, what I've read in talking with the schools that are involved with it, really there's no change in staff costs or class size should occur compared to the what we have for the alternate day schedule. There would be some cost differential in situations where the school is moving from a traditional schedule of a teacher teaching 5 classes to now a schedule of 6 with three per day. Given our student-teacher ratios, I wouldn't see a significant change. One of the things that I did hand out to you, and Dr. Brothers did refer to it earlier, was our student-teacher ratios, and these were given to you earlier on this fall as we started looking at. But I just wanted to remind you that this is a comparison, first of all, of our faculty-student ratios of our high school versus the other high schools in the Rutland County. And then the last 2 pages goes through and gives you a look at our teachers, the number of students that they have. And the last page, it gives you our full-time equivalent teacher average number of students is 122, which equates out to our average class size is just a little over 20, which again is the highest in the county. The last part of the information that I gave you talks specifically about reactions that I got from and we received from these Vermont schools that are presently involved in semesterizing. We asked the question up front, why did you go to semestering? And was it philosophical or financial, or what was the prerequisite of why you were doing it? And in all 5 schools that we canvassed, it was a philosophical decision for those advantages that I pointed out on that first page, and not financial. As a matter of fact, most of them felt that there wasn't a financial savings, and in some cases they felt that it might have cost them a little more to go to it because they were, especially if they were going from a teacher teaching 5 to a teacher then teaching 3 a day, but basically 6 classes in a year. The semestering, as I said before, semestering varies with each school from 80 to 90 to 100-minute blocks. Plus, what a lot of them are doing is, as I said before, is there's a hybrid now to this in the fact that they're building in some shorter periods that may be 40 or 45-minute periods, and those courses may be running year-long, again, to try to meet the demands of music programs and those situations where students need to have the course over the course of the entire year. One of the schools that I talked with is also looking at some of the lower level classes going to full year courses, 40-minute courses, basically going back to the idea of the schedule along with the semestering. Some courses, some of the higher level courses doing semestering, and the lower level courses actually having those as year-long blocks. Again, each of the schools I talked with, the jury's kind of out on the retention of learning. Still a major concern. The 2 areas, probably more so than any, that have expressed that, at least in these particular schools they talked to, are math and foreign language. Again, talking about the band and chorus, difficult to semester, and most of those are incorporating the shorter blocks. The schools that we talked with are bearing out a lot of what those critical issues I talked about with the transfer students. There are concerns there, and what they're going to be doing with those. And some of the teachers within the schools are feeling that their major concern is that students need time to process materials. Intensely going through a class from September to January may not give students enough time to process what they're learning. That by extending it throughout the entire year, students may be in a benefit. So that's a concern. There's no hard and fast data on it at this point in time. It's still, but it has been raised as a concern. That's the gist of it. Probably the advantage we have at this point in time is that there are at least 5 schools, and I'm hearing of more that are sampling this semestering, that we can, for once, at least look and see what somebody else is doing and decide what's working for them, and if we decide to go in this direction at some point in time, that we can pick and choose what works best for us. But it's nice to think that somebody else can be the guinea pig for a little bit, and we can get a sense of what works and what doesn't, and before we jump into it. Questions or comments? Hope I answered most of your questions anyway that you might have had regarding semester.
Do you have a gut feeling on what you personally face?
It's tough, Bill, at this point in time because not knowing more hard and fast data regarding that retention of learning, that would be a major concern of mine.
Is there anything in the studies that have been done on children with regard to their age when it works better?
I haven't gotten into that part of it, and I think that'll be the next piece, is to start looking at more of the pieces that are out there that people have actually done with studies and find out more of the particulars regarding that. I have to believe that these schools that are actually doing this have to be looking at the research that's taking place and getting a sense, as well as doing their own data and assessing it. So we want to be able to tie into that and figure out what would best meet our needs. Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how interested would you say that we are at this point in time?
Depends on who we is.
We as the high school administration.
Well, I'm always interested in new things, especially if it's something that would benefit our students more than what we had at this point in time. I think we always need to move forward.
You'd say you're more mediocre?
I'm going to play middle of the fence. I'll say a 5. How's that? I don't have a strong conviction that we definitely need to move towards it. But I think it's something I'd like to keep looking at. I don't want to say it's definitely nothing I'd ever want to look at. I think that it has some merits, but I certainly want to make sure those merits would outweigh all the disadvantages as well.
Thank you.
One of the things that is key in what I'm hearing is a consistent theme is that for those who are doing semestering, it's philosophical and not financial. And that I think a year ago when our discussion was going on, and Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong, the motivation was financial.
Okay, I'll correct you. The time that the budget discussions began, then that was when I had raised the idea of semestering. So it would appear that my concerns for raising semestering was tied to financial. But I disagree. That was not the reason for bringing it up. But that, but the format that it came out in made it appear that way. But I've always felt philosophically that semestering was the right way to go. For the very same reasons that this board approved the day-long instruction at the Stafford Technical Center. And the ability to condense the courses, the longer blocks of time, the more intense study, the ability for students to drop in and drop out of programs more easily. There's a lot of sound rationale. I believe that there is an offshoot benefit, which is financial, but I don't think that that would be the sole purpose for going to it.
Anybody else?
I'm going to voice just a support and a real interest in it because I think academically it provides more to students. And certainly for the better students, I think it's encouraging. That's why I would be interested to know about the learning and what happens with 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and where that fits. I know that some prep schools are on, most prep schools are on the semester system. A lot of the foreign schools are on semestering because they can get that greater concentration and more continuity with it.
What I've also noticed with the schools that I talked with is that most of them started with a strong semester program and have backed off as they've had a chance to experience it with the idea that some of their students it doesn't work for them, some of the lower levels, that they really needed to spread those out. So it's something we need to can look at and contend with. But no, I think we need to follow up and just keep an eye on it as it goes. There are some benefits.
I would just like to point out, too, that right now we have a natural break in the middle of the year, and that is Jan Plan. That already provides us in our existing schedule with a drawback, and that is a 5 to 6 or 4 to 5 week period that the students are not involved in their coursework. And it would seem to me as though If Jan Plan is going to be maintained, then semestering would work better along with it than the system that we have in existence right now.
I'll be interested to see, we've surveyed the faculty, we've surveyed the students, and we sent out with the Jan Plan report cards, we sent out surveys to the parents. I'll be interested to see what responses we get from all those three areas in that regard, because that was one of the questions, was it, is there a problem with that, taking that break in between? Is it hampering the opportunity to, the continuity of the program? So I'll be interested in seeing how people feel about that, from all three of those aspects. I think it'll be an important point to ponder.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Superintendent's report, Dr. Brothers.
Thank you, Dr. Dick. Moving along, we have a couple of key issues to talk about under the superintendent's report. First, what I would like to do, though, is to wish all our parents, teachers, and staff, and students a very nice winter break coming up, beginning with the week of February 26th, Monday the 26th. That's a week later than has been customary, but we did that this year in lieu of cooperation and trying to provide a better schedule for the tech school. So it's a week away. Comments, other comments. First, the 1996-97 draft of the school year calendar. Like any reactions, comments, opinions from the school commissioners regarding this draft?
I had a couple of questions. And I know this is just a draft, but is Martin Luther King Jr. holiday still a holiday? It's not noted here. It's not. And what about,
we've not celebrated.
what about town meeting day for next year?
Town meeting day is the day that we changed the schedule this year and decided to run school on that Monday and not Tuesday to get more effective use of time. So we would propose to continue that next year and be consistent with all the other school districts around us. The Martin Luther King Day is one of those judgment calls. It is certainly a national holiday. It's a question of whether we would decide to take the day off for our students in celebrating that holiday. It's been traditionally used as an in-service day the past several years with our teachers that Monday. Or have the students in school that day, use it as a school day, go to some other times for in-service time, which this calendar points out, and possibly do a better job with students in school, appreciating what Martin Luther King Day is all about and who he was, and conduct some formal programs on his behalf, such as we do with Memorial Day, for example. So there's some gives to get with that type of a change and that possibility. But certainly open to ideas and thoughts, because we have to go run this by the superintendents in the county beginning tomorrow.
My last thought is the 2-week winter break, end of December into January. In essence, that's what it is for the students, and the parents also who are staying home with their students for 2 solid weeks. Can you give me a rationale for putting the in-service there? Any other thoughts?
Our administrators were just thinking that if we could bring our staff together in the middle of the year like that, and find some effective days to maybe get some valuable time with them all day and take it away. We have been doing 5 days in front of the year the past couple of years for some very important reasons, because of all the shifting and some of the reorganization we did the past 3 to 4 years. Now that's really behind us, and we're looking at maybe some other ways and trying to spread that in-service time around to do some maybe better things in terms of staff development, and just use other times of the year. We looked at that Thursday and Friday as possibly being a good match between those 2 days. Trying to look for different ways, hopefully some better ways to set up the calendar for the year. But we may get similar kinds of concerns from our other superintendents, and the next draft you may not see that there. But many of the superintendents in the county have also been promoting the cause, not all, but several of the superintendents, about trying to start the school year earlier and maybe get more valuable time up front in the school year when children are perhaps more ready to come back. That flies in the face of a lot of people who like to take that one last summer holiday. Many states use that as a customary schedule all the time. But on the other hand, we bring our athletic teams back to start even before this. And although that's not the justification for moving this one up, it's to try to maybe try to capture some more quality time earlier with the kids. But I know that wasn't a question you asked me, but sort of rambling around with some responses.
I have some general questions that I'd like to raise. And I'd like to preface them by saying I don't have an agenda and I don't have answers. But I just wanted to mention a few things. I have concerns about starting before Labor Day. You're really talking about the staff starting on August 21st.
Yes.
That sounds awfully early to me. When I looked at and I thought that some of that time could be made up that we end the year early. The last day of classes, I think, is June 10th, which is a Tuesday. If we went to the end of that week, I mean, through the second full week in June, we could pick up, some of those days. I had some questions to raise about the in-service. There's 3 in-service half days. Now, I remember in the past when we had those, they were different days during the calendar week. And a suggestion came from a board member at the board table, make them all Fridays. And it just happened. And I wonder how that's working out, because some of the feedback that I heard was that if you had a special in the classroom on Friday, all the Friday kids lost their special. Should we, again, I'm not offering a point on, should we be looking at varying those? And how do we possibly make up, I don't know how many days, but I know that we need the cluster meetings and whatnot, and they're important. But we have kids that end up with substitutes in the classroom. Is there a way that we can get the cluster meeting time in and not have to hire substitutes? Just throw those things out there. I don't have the answers, I only have the questions. And I guess my one other point was on December 20th, which is a half a day. I think we did that this year, and again, my parental sense was we had our holiday parties on Thursday, and I wonder if Friday became a valuable half day or not, or whether we lost anything. I don't know, but I raised that question.
I don't think we're really losing too much. Actually, Michael, that half day and the one before Thanksgiving are now some contracted time that we negotiated with our teachers. But we also are counting it as half days for teacher time, whereas students were counting it as full day as far as the state record keeping goes. But we actually show a calendar for the 180 student days, so we picked up some time in a sense, so we tried to balance it off.
So 4 or 5 of those student days are half days.
The other ones you're talking about are, yes, the ones we set up for release time, we call it. They're the ones that have been scheduled, I think, on a Friday. They're the ones you're asking about, possibly could they be other days. We talked about that as administrative staff last year, and it was one of those things that's 6 of one, half a dozen of another in terms of missed teaching time and missed specialist time. So we ran with it this way this year. Are proposing the same thing again next year, but that can be modified.
Again,
we'll
those
take
were
a,
my suggestions.
We'll take a look
Those
at
are
it.
Questions to be raised.
Are there other questions?
Have we gotten any response yet from the teachers union relative to starting before?
No, we haven't, Bill. I sent it out to all the unions, all the groups last week. So all groups have an opportunity this year for input.
I personally, since I've served on the board and we've begun looking at starting school after Labor Day or in September, I certainly appreciated, as a parent, that later start, but have also taken the time to touch base with some teachers that I've come in contact with, and they've always seemed to also be in favor of that later start. So I would certainly need to let you know that I am, we'll be very closely looking at that. And I think, and maybe in the long-range planning, and I don't know if CAP is ever looking at this or whatever, I have to say to you as a working parent, maybe new to that career, I need to share with you that maybe we can begin looking at some kind of, I don't want to call it school daycare, but I think we need to begin looking at what kind of, whether we can work in conjunction with the recreation department or whatever to begin looking at the trauma and the kind of issues that places on parents in terms of two parents working. It is very difficult to begin programming for that, and I have to share with you, I think kids should be home. But I have also watched kids not, or being home alone, and I've also had to juggle the schedule. And I've also seen successful programs managed in school systems like Montpelier where they're doing, and I can't remember the name of it, but kids absolutely love it. They go to school, but its potential, it's a school day program, or
I mean, like daycare.
It is, but it's
after school.
It's set up in such a way that the staffing, it's a real quality piece. They've got the facility that has the room, the space, and the options to do a real quality program. I'm not sure how it's funded, but it seems to me that somewhere down the line, and Nathaniel may be graduating by the time that happens, I would encourage you to look at that, because I think that we're really not doing a service to our community and their families if we don't. So
I'm not so sure Nathaniel will graduate by the time we do that. We're so fast becoming inclusive school systems, doing more and more things in the community.
Well, I have two nieces that are in those kinds of programs, and my sister-in-law says if I'm home, she said they'll opt to go there. That's how much fun they've had, and they just have, it's been a wonderful, wonderful program. So I guess that we need to be taking a look at that happening maybe someday.
I think the only problem being in daycare, Chrysler King tried to run a program like that, and to my knowledge it folded because they were closed on snow days, and they were closed on holidays that parents still had to work, so those kids still had nowhere to go during those hours.
I don't know
And
what the
I
issue
know
is.
it folded. I mean, I know it's a good concept, but there's a lot of pros and cons.
Absolutely, and clearly it's, and I think financial is a big one that certainly Chrysler King, I know, had to play with. And so we need to stay open to every option we have. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions regarding the schedule, Cheryl?
I just have one comment about the early start time, the August start time, and that is that I like the sounds of the early start time. I think that what it does is it evens up the two, at the secondary level, the two semester blocks, so that kids are getting meaningful amount of time, both semesters. And I think that would be a plus, certainly for those teachers that are trying to deliver 2 quarters worth of curriculum in the shorter period of time.
We don't really end up approving this until April, so there's still a lot of time for other ideas and talk. And if you have any light bulbs go on, give me a call, because we have to negotiate this and work it out with a lot of different groups. Next, there's nothing else on that right now. I think the next item on that agenda was just a reminder from all the school commissioners, or maybe an awareness for all of you. There's quite an extensive technology fair being scheduled for the Diamond Run Mall on Saturday in April. David, could you help me with what that Saturday is?
I think it's April 13th. Yeah.
25 schools participate.
Which Saturday?
13.
13. Okay. So anyone who's in the mall that day will get an exposure to a lot of technology and a lot of school kids. We have a number of demonstrations being planned right here in our own school district, which will be taken down there that day. Next item, in your booklet, in your packet, I included a little brochure which describes the Career Center at Rutland High School. And from time to time, it's been referred to here as a board table in some slighting way. I wanted to formally put this in your packet so you would have a chance to see it. The two ladies that run this program are just doing an outstanding, super job getting kids involved in jobs around the community, school-to-work transition, career paths. It's just a great program. If you're ever in the building, go up to the second floor, walk around to the far side of the information center, and you'll come across the office where these folks work, and you'll see bulletin boards in the hallway on both sides, filled with career opportunities, job placements, just all types of neat stuff taking place, which is super for the kids. Next item, proposal to house Channel 15 at Stafford Technical Center. We're still involved in negotiations. We concluded the lease agreement that's in draft form. We wanted to bring it to your attention and ask for any thoughts or ideas. And just sort of bring you up to speed on the fact that we're still making progress and the possibility of linking up Channel 15 with the Stafford Technical Center.
I pass on you a concern from Commissioner Sherman under item 5.5. She just wanted to make sure that it's understood that it is state law, no smoking in the technical center or the premises entirely.
That's a point we've discussed with them because that's new to an organization like that. They understand that and they will have to abide by that if in fact this deal is ever signed.
I'd like to see a section in here that's entitled Obligations of RRC-TV, so that it's clear what we're expecting to get from them.
That's the section that was missing from this draft bill. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
We have a number of things on the table that would fit into that section that have been discussed. I'd also like to bring to the attention of all the school commissioners that that's item 5.6. It's on the second page. This is a very important thing, very important item, because with the development of media today, with the development of public access TV, and it is truly real public access, they deal with a number of independent producers, but literally anyone can walk in and arrange time to produce and put on their own show. There's potential out there, way out there. It could be 5 years away, it could be 1 year away, for some sort of provocative material to be broadcast over a public access channel. Everyone involved in this has to be aware that that potential exists. The Colchester School District has been involved in something regarding the public access channel, which is headquartered in their building, and they've had to deal with some delicate issues lately. I just wanted to bring it to your attention. If this ever becomes a side deal, there may be something that develops someday, which could cause some controversy and bring issues to this table. Not that you would have to decide it at all, because it wouldn't be your program. It's the public access channel that's running it as an independent entity by themselves under their charter and what they have to provide the public. So we'll continue our discussions based upon those caveats, but as I said, it's still under discussion, it's not finished yet. And there's always a possibility that it may not become finished. That always exists until it's signed and sealed. Finally, a position description, if you will, for a position called Coordinator of Curriculum and Assessment. This is a position that would be adopted to provide the assistance for David Wolf for next year. He can speak to this in more detail than myself, but we've had a lot of dialogue on it between us. But it's a position that he has sort of designed to support him and his work next year and the next couple of years. Plus a search committee and a process for hiring. Dave, any reactions or questions from this board?
I just offer a couple of comments quickly at the beginning. The purpose here is to sort of purify the position so it's strictly educational, and it's not an assistant superintendent's position. It wouldn't include labor management relations. It wouldn't include day-to-day operations. Wouldn't include negotiating a Channel 15 contract and those kinds of things, and some of the other responsibilities that, for instance, I've had this year. But instead, the person who's hired would focus on curriculum and assessment issues, would chair the CAP committee, oversight implementation of the K-12 technology plan as it's developed this spring, some staff supervision, and grant acquisition, which would really be a partnership, a grant acquisition focused on academic matters. So we've sort of taken out some of the other responsibilities which I just mentioned to make it a position reports to the superintendent, but focuses on the reason why we're all here, and that is instructional improvement. Now, the process that we discussed would include a representative group to do the screening and interviewing. It would be an open process, well advertised, and I think we would attract a lot of very well qualified candidates, because this is a district that's perceived to be and is on the move, and there are a lot of top quality educators who I think will want to work here. And I expect that we'll have lots of applications. And as indicated here, the timeline for hiring the person.
Less than a year ago, this board saw the need for an assistant superintendent. Now you're asking us to make some adjustments in the position. Why?
Because I believe that the person who's hired should focus solely on educational issues, and I'm willing to take on some of those responsibilities that I mentioned before with respect to labor management relations, general operations, negotiating contracts like this sort of thing. I'm willing to take that on. I still will have my hand in educational issues, but I believe that we can accomplish a lot more with a position like this at a level just below that of an assistant superintendent. Now, I also think that starting July 1st, we'll want to take a very close look at all of the operations here in Longfellow and throughout the school district, and would reserve judgment on any other kinds of assistance that we might need, particularly if we are to pursue grants in an entrepreneurial sense, which I would like us to do next year. We've done a lot this year and brought in a lot of grant money. We do that in a thoughtful way, but I'd like to have the flexibility to look at our operations next year and to recommend to you any improvements that we might want to make.
Dave, I think we should also point out that, although it's not called an assistant superintendent, we certainly included on the second page here that item, which would indicate this is the person that you would go to represent you at meetings or to represent you in your absence as a facilitator for that person.
That's true, and I also wouldn't have any problem with a suggestion that was made by Madeline Sherman that licensure be that of a superintendent and as a principal. That would not be an issue.
Well, I have to say that I disagree with it, because I don't believe that because somebody's a superintendent that they've been to the well of knowledge and have all the knowledge, and I think there are principals out there that have been a lot closer to education than a lot of superintendents have. And I don't think we should shut somebody out of the, maybe somebody has to be in the program to become a superintendent.
But I don't think we should shut somebody out just because of the principal.
Well, I had that thought as well and listed it and/or. But I think the quality of applicants we have will include those who are certifiable as a superintendent.
Certifiable?
Yes.
The title, I don't see if we felt we needed an assistant superintendent, and I was a little surprised when I see the title there, I don't see the title as being as important to what the job is here as the job description and what we're expecting from the person. So my concern is not so much with what we call this person as what the perception we give when we put this person in here is. I was under the impression that the position we described in past years was one that would have a person who would also be learning and knowing what was going on should, God forbid, something happen to the person who's in the other position, and be able to cross over somewhat. I think an assistant superintendent in this district certainly isn't out of line, and I think we're talking semantics in terms of what we call this person, because it's the job description and what we ask them to do and what crossover skills and duties we describe in that job that is the important factor here. And if our perception is that the person is an assistant superintendent by another name, I don't see the difference in calling him something else.
So you agree with the title or you don't agree with it?
I don't know why we don't just call him an assistant superintendent and give him the rein. And it's not something that I would feel needs a lot of argumentation, and I'm not going to stand in the way of it, of this, the coordinator of curriculum and assessment. But I think what we tell that person his job is, or her job is, excuse me, Deb, his or her job is, I think the important thing is the description of the job and what we ask him or her to do, and that the person is also in a position to be closely tied to you should we need that.
But frankly, it doesn't matter to me what it's called, as long as the focus is on curriculum and instruction.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to suggest assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, that's fine. I wanted to just give it some description in the title. And it doesn't really matter either way.
Go ahead, Al.
I just kind of feel that an assistant superintendent title also carries with it some authority. If the superintendent was gone on vacation or outside of the seminar, that person becomes, perception-wise, is the person in charge, where the coordinator of curriculum may not have quite the same authority, at least inherent in the title and in the position. And I think that I would prefer to have someone that was, quote, second in command of the system. And then you define the duties that you primarily want them to do.
Bill?
Well, I'm going to disagree. First of all, I agree with John that I wouldn't want to limit this to just people who are certified as superintendents and principals. I want to have it wide open. We operated this program with us, an assistant superintendent, for a couple of years. One of the things that I want to focus on is curriculum and assessment, and I want a person, when they put the hat on, to know that that's their first responsibility, damn it. And their first responsibility is not to be a second in command. I want them to focus on working with the schools in curriculum and assessment. And I think it's great to have this name because I think it tells them what their job is. And I want the person coming in not to think that they're an assistant superintendent. I want them to think that their job is curriculum and they fill in when you're not here. And because of your young age, I don't think I'm worried about you dropping over dead and worried about I'm going to have somebody sitting around to pick up those strings. So for a 2-year period of time, I want to make curriculum development and assessment a top priority. I want to have our whole program looked at, thought about, and somebody who has just those skills, and the administrative skills that are necessary for an assistant superintendent may be totally different than the skills necessary to be a person who is geared toward curriculum and assessment. And therefore, I like the description and I like the title.
Might I just suggest to move us along a Solomon-like compromise that we call it an assistant superintendent for curriculum and assessment? Would that satisfy those who are concerned about the title?
I have another concern prior to anybody answering that question, if you don't mind. Would you see this position as being part of a bargaining unit?
No.
Coordinator of curriculum and assessment, even if it were not an assistant superintendent, would not be part of the RAA bargaining unit?
Correct.
Okay. Then secondly, a year ago, when the position of assistant superintendent was initially developed, it was developed, I think, to capitalize on your particular strengths in combination with the needs of the district. The needs of the district have been identified by the committee work that had been done several years ago, the one that Sandy had headed, that had identified needs in the curricular areas as well as significant needs in personnel evaluation, staff development. If the job description for assistant superintendent last year was to focus on your strengths and the school's needs, then I would like to see this next position to focus on the district's other needs, which are personnel, evaluation, staff development. And if we've already identified your skills as being in the area of curriculum and assessment, then I would like to see for this additional person be someone who can deal with personnel and staff development. And I think that that would be a greater complement to the strengths that you bring to the district. You've already begun the CAP program, and at least to the best of my knowledge, that's moving along very nicely. It would be a shame to have any kind of a disruption in that process. So I would very much like to see this position be focusing on the personnel side of the district's needs as opposed to the curriculum side. I think that we're already beginning to move in the areas of curriculum, and we have the people here to do that.
You hire a superintendent to be an expert in all the areas you mentioned, and I hope you've hired the right superintendent to do that. I think you have. In terms of complementing one's strengths, I would think that all of those would be strengths. I think the superintendent ought to be involved in personnel and have a hand in curriculum and assessment. And when you mention professional development, all of that's related. Curriculum assessment, professional development. So we call it CAP, curriculum assessment, professional development. And so I would ask the board to focus our efforts on curriculum and assessment, as been mentioned before, because that's our main business. You can be sure that I'll still have a hand in it, no matter who's hired for the position.
Anybody else with additional questions?
I'm not strong feeling anyway. But I do still think that the clear delineation of who's in charge, I think is important. But if that's not the majority board, I don't have a big problem with it.
Are we under any legal obligation if we call this person an assistant superintendent that he has to be certified as a superintendent?
He would have to be licensed as, in Vermont, the licensures of the superintendent that covers both assistant superintendents and superintendents. And once you become a superintendent, you have a 2-year license, which is then renewed through a process.
So if we call this person a coordinator of curriculum and assessment, they do not have to be a superintendent. They don't have to have that schooling.
They don't have to.
Okay.
But the reverse is true as we call them assistant superintendent. They don't have to.
Right.
Well, if I can just weigh in with my opinion, I would favor leaving the title as is, changing the qualification piece, must be licensed as a Vermont principal, and work towards certification as a superintendent, but leave that door open. And I was like to close by saying that I believe that Dave has set this thing up where it shows that this person would represent him when Dave is not available or around. And maybe we can even strengthen that item number 3 on page 2 to make that even clearer. That in his absence, the other person would be the number 2 in command.
Which in essence makes he or she assistant superintendent.
For that time period.
So I kind of agree with Alan. I think the title is missing.
I would be, to move this along, which I think we need to do, I'd be satisfied with the title of Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Assessment, if that's the majority view of the board, keeping in mind that that's the major focus of the position.
If someone who has a strong feeling one way or the other, the chair would love to hear a motion, and then we can find out which way the majority of the board sits down.
I make a motion that we accept the position description as it is written, with the only change being to qualification aid. No, it says they can just be a principal, right?
Leave it as it is.
I leave it as it is. I make the motion that we accept it as the position description.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion.
Are we allowed to recommend changing it to director as opposed to coordinator? Is that motion? We're looking at that, I have to do that separate, sorry. Okay, very late.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Can I see the hands in favor, please? Those opposed? The motion is defeated on a vote of 3-4, 5 against. Chair would entertain any other motion.
I move. Go ahead.
I was just going to suggest that we've had some suggestions this evening. Is it critical that we move with this tonight?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Ted.
I move that we accept the recommendation with the change in title to Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Assessment. And under qualification, we add or working toward licensure as a Vermont.
Can't have one. I don't think you can have the certificate.
It's certifiable, is it?
If they're assistant superintendent, they must have that certification.
Okay. All right. My motion is to accept the position as recommended with the change in title as Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Assessment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Can I see the ayes hands, please? Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries 5-3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any new business to come before the board? Is there any old business to come before the board? Anything on policy, Cheryl?
No, nothing to bring forward, but I would like to schedule a policy meeting for next Wednesday, the 21st. Is that all right with you, Debbie?
It's going out.
Okay. At 7 o'clock. And our primary topic will be the athletic council policy. We also have an additional policy to clean up from December, I think. What is that?
anyway.
Yeah, we've got another one to clean up too, but that one was just a minor change in language, something to do with the staff support.
It's a very minor change.
Yeah.
I don't remember what
Yeah,
it is. It could be handled that night, probably.
Yes, yes. So that will be February 21st at 7 o'clock here.
Is there anything else to come before the board in open session? If not, I would announce that the next regular meeting of the board is scheduled Tuesday night, February 27th at 7 p.m. here at Longfellow, and also remind the board that next Tuesday night, 20th, it will be a board strategic planning session with our facilitator, again here at Longfellow at 7 p.m. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion that the board go into executive session for the purposes of discussing contractual and personnel items. The premature release of information regarding either of these issues would place the board at a substantial disadvantage in the opinion of the chair.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The board will recess to the superintendent's office